Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I am pleased to be joined by Wally Waltner. Wally, thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate the opportunity.
So, first, you write short stories and also now novels for Racketeer Press. Can you tell us how you got involved with that publisher?
So Raconteur Press, I met most of them at FenCon 2022. FenCon's in Dallas. The guest of honor at that particular con was Larry Correia.
Mm-hmm.
When Larry is named the guest of honor at pretty much any con he goes to, the usual suspects will do the usual suspect things and raise a stink and complain. And so Dallas was close enough to where I live in Kansas City, and I had met Larry a handful of times already at author signings, and I had backed his role-playing game at Gen Con, and so I had met him there. And I said, I'm going to go. And I hadn't been to a literary con in a long time. I mostly am in the RPG con community as a GM, and I help as a volunteer for organized play for Paizo Publishing. So I went down there to support Larry, and as a result, met many of the folks with Raconteur Press. I knew Law Dog. I had read both of his books, and was not familiar with the short stories that he had started at that point, but it was there that I met Johnny Hayden. It was there that I met a handful of other folks, and as a result, I got the itch to start writing. One, because it was a way to support, it was a way to support Ian. It was a way to support Raconteur, and it was satisfying an itch to contribute something back to the literary community. So this particular idea for this novel, and they had asked me in April 2024, invited me to their first kind of cadre of authors. And this idea had been in my head for a long time. I do give credit again to Larry and Steve Diamond and the Writer Dojo for crystallizing the idea in my head. They had a guest. They had Craig Nybo, if you're familiar with his work in the horror space, but he's also a trained professional musician. So, and I have a music degree as well, and so he had asked a question of, Steve had asked the question in that particular episode to Craig, how would you use music in writing? And he gave a wonderfully credible answer about using the structures of Western music theory as the foundation of creating a magic system. I did not do that, but it gave me the chance to start thinking in terms of, well, if I did this, then what? And if that happened, and you start, and from there I created the system that became the core of what Muses of War is about.
Okay, and so what would, if you had I always ask authors for their elevator pitch, the really quick 30-second soundbite. What's the book's basic plot, basic story? What's it about? So,
Muses of War is a story that explores the role of art in society. It explores the role of art in culture, and it asks the question, what if the power to create was itself supernatural? And what if the act of creation imbued power into the creation? So a performance, of course, is in the moment, but objects, as you create objects. How do you make a magic sword? Well, first of all, you have a muse-touched smith, create the blade. You have a muse-touched leather worker who creates the grip and the sheath. You have perhaps a muse-touched jeweler who puts a jewel on the pommel. And all of these things, by contributing together, and then you can have a bard or a skald telling stories of heroic uses of the sword, how and about nobility and those kinds of things, and all of that stacks and imbues into the object itself. And it doesn't have to, and that's an example because that happens to be kind of the sword of state of the kingdom in my setting is created that way. and it becomes a kind of a centerpiece into the plot for it.
So, did you plot out how many books the Muses of War series will be?
I believe it is going to end up being 4.
Okay.
So this, the working title for the second book is Fugue of Fire.
Okay.
The working title for the third book is Scherzo of Madness. And
ooh, there's a good word there. I like it.
And the fourth title is Finale, and I have not decided what the object is going to be for that one.
Okay. And do you know what your, I don't know, if you're the type of writer that's able to like know like what your process is going to be, do you know how long in between books will be expected?
I'm very much hoping to be done, to give the draft of the second book to Raconteur by October-ish.
Okay.
And of course, now that I've said that and it's going to be put out on the internet, now I'm committed. So I'll be honest, I'm still learning my process, and I'm still trying different things to figure out what works and what doesn't. And I think, in fairness, I think everyone, whether they've been writing for a year or they've been writing for 30, experiments with their process because they're trying to figure out what fits.
So I know that Racketeer, with a lot of their new novels that they're doing the pieces, the serials, where they're doing it in parts. Did yours come out all at once, or did yours come out as a serial?
It came out as a serial. It came out in 3 weekly installments over in the month of May, and then it was Memorial Day weekend that it came out. The full novel came out.
Okay, and when you're writing a full novel, do you find yourself doing a lot more? And of course, you're still getting used to the process, but do you tend to like be more of a plotter or a pantser?
I do. I absolutely. For me, I say pantser. Not because I can't commit, but I outline, but I don't outline in detail until I get to the point where I'm at. It's like, I know there are like 6 ways to drive from Kansas City to Chattanooga, and there are, and I know where I want to go, so I know what the destination is, and I know the places I want to stop along the way. Beyond that, if I want to, if they say, "Ooh, hey, look, that looks interesting," I'll go there.
Yeah.
So, and sometimes that will work, and sometimes I end up with stuff that ends up I end up either completely redoing, or I say I need to set that aside. Part of the editorial process was really interesting because when I gave them a manuscript that was about 110,000 words, which is on the upper edge of what they'll take. Basically the philosophy is once you get to 120,000 words, you don't have one novel, you have 2. And so, I mean, their sweet spot is 60 to 90, is what they've said. And so I pushed that a little bit, but it came back and said, "You've really written the first act of book 2 is what you're calling act 4." So it's like, okay. So I saved all of that, and I realized I'm started, and I have plenty. I have good words to work with to jumpstart the second book, which I'm right now. I would say I would be, with that and what I've written since, I would say I'm probably about a third of the way through it.
So you don't just write the novels, and you've also written short stories, but I believe you've also edited some collections for Racketeer. Particularly, I wanted to ask about the Magic Malfunction collection.
Magic Malfunction was a wonderful anthology to put together. Again, new experience for me, but of course, and they make it very easy because after 50 of these, they've got their process down pretty well. And what I wanted to make sure was and we understood what the theme was, which was just when things go sideways, what are the consequences? Yeah. So, and actually, I have a short story in there as well, which is a prequel story to this book, and it talks about the protagonist with his as a younger man traveling with his mentor. He's apprenticed to a master, and he's learning the process of being a bard by traveling with a seasoned a seasoned master.
And were there any besides your story? Were there any like stories that just really stuck out to you in that collection?
There were multiple ones. All of them struck me, in one way or another. But my absolute favorite was about, and it was the magic system was modern, and it was I'm trying kinopoetics.
Okay.
So the intent was to speak for machines, mm-hmm. And so the system was imbuing imbuing supernatural things into primarily cars, mm-hmm. And I don't want to give it away, but there's the main character is a student who wants to go to the most the biggest university for this, and she's finishing her application, mm-hmm. And somehow her father's car decides to go on runabout, and yep. She has to go, and she realizes it's because she left a detail undone on her application that ended up then going to the car, and she has to chase this car. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I don't want to spoil the ending, but it was absolutely amazing, and it was genre defying without being a complete. It was a wonderful way of expressing it in an unexpected way. That's what really drew me to it. So.
Do you have any other short story collections that you're either contributing to or editing that are coming out in the near future?
Near future, so I have rights back to most of my to most of my stories. Raconteur releases rights after a year, mm-hmm. But you still get paid if books sell from
yep.
them. So that's
a really nice deal.
No, it's absolutely. And so I intend to. Take those stories, add 2 or 3 others, mm-hmm. and release that as a collection. I also am in the early stages of planning a anthology on my own, mm-hmm. Through my imprint, which is called Wallbanger Creative. And the intent is for it to be, I'm calling it The Muse in Us. It is not explicitly set in this universe, though I will help anyone who wants to write in it. Mm-hmm. But I just want stories of supernatural creativity. Mm-hmm. And I'm planning on doing that later in the year as well. So.
Okay. You already answered one of my other questions, which was that book 2 you'll be turning in later this year. So I would assume we'd see it sometime next year, hopefully.
If I have my way, I would like to use FenCon 26 as my launching point for it.
That'd be great. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on the channel today.
Absolutely.
And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.